On Demon Buddha Mountain, there existed a sect called the Seven Slayers, with its top assassin being Sword Ka. He always carried on his back a case of divine swords of immense power. No one knew exactly how many swords Sword Ka kept inside. Each time in battle, if his first wave of swords was knocked away, he could immediately summon a second wave. Thus, the martial world speculated that there were at least 1,000 sacred swords within that case. Sword Ka was the only son of the sect leader of the Seven Slayers, named Whiteley Thorncore. Don't blame the admin. The director really named the sect leader Thorncore. He built a small sect that many relied on. But now, a rebellion had arisen, so Whiteley Thorncore ordered his son to handle it. None who bore blood guilt would be spared. Accompanying Sword Ka was the assassin Red Spear. After wiping out the rebellious sect, only a mother and child remained. Swordka stopped Red Spear, choosing to spare the innocent child. Swordka and Red Spear were lovers. He no longer wanted to stay in the sect, constantly living by the sword. So he proposed to his beloved that they leave that place of death and roam the bright world together. Red Spear agreed. When Whiteley Thorncore learned of his son's betrayal, he immediately sent his disciples to eliminate him. The first to appear was the Void Soul Trader, a mummified figure who could phase through any terrain. He appeared right before Sword Ka, then vanished, only to attack from behind, but he still failed to wound the top assassin of the Seven Slayers. Suddenly, a gigantic anaconda emerged from the ground, its gaping mouth wider than a cauldron. Sharp fangs lunged toward Sword Ka. A girl emerged from the anaconda's jaws. She was its master. Nicknamed the Great Viper Queen, her name was Viper Chi. The Seven Slayers were once a merciless assassin sect, yet their top killer had shown mercy to a child. Unfortunately, that child was slain by Viper Chi. The third foe arrived with a punch that cracked the earth and scattered Sword Ka's swords. He was a fake monk named Stone Bell. Sword Ka used a spell to summon another wave of swords to clash with Stone Bell's demon Buddha Bell. From afar, an alchemist named T-Blaze arrived. Sword Ka and Red Spear now faced four foes. But these weren't ordinary people. They were monsters wielding demonic techniques. Sword Ka's swords had to divide and fight each enemy simultaneously. Even so, his strength showed no sign of waning. Sword Ka had sworn that today he would take Red Spear away from Demon Buddha Mountain. He devoted his all to her. But then she betrayed him. In unbearable pain, he used his remaining arm to weave a spell. His divine sword surrounded him and vanished. His body drifted to a riverbank where a lady named First Sue discovered him. She was righteous and couldn't ignore the wounded, so she brought Sword Ka home. Her household was large, her father a die-hard fan of Hero Yang, so he allowed the strange man his daughter brought home to stay. He helped clean Sword Ka's wounds. That night, the entire Tsu family gathered warmly around the kitchen. She slurped salty soup her mother cooked. The poor family lived in an abandoned temple atop a mountain. Despite their poverty and many children, they knew contentment and lived happily. Suddenly, a loud noise erupted outside. First Sue rushed out and was shocked to find her giant white goose sitting on Sword Ka. The goose thought he was food. First Sue had brought home, so it dragged him outside to feast. Sword Ka had woken up, lucky for him. First Sue let him have her room. Having grown up on cold, heartless Demon Buddha Mountain, Sword Ka misunderstood the Tsu family's kindness as a trap and stayed up all night wary. Back on the mountain, the sect leader was furious upon hearing Sword Ka had survived. Turns out, Red Spear had been the old man's lover all along. He'd only given her to his son as a toy. Yet Sword Ka fell in love with her. Now, she had returned to be Whiteley Thorncore's toy once more. The old man ordered the rest of his assassins to hunt down Sword Ka, dead or alive. By now, the Tsu family had brought Sword Ka to the city of On River, but not to find a healer. Instead, they made him pose as a beggar. Passersby, seeing a one-armed beggar, pitied him and gave him money. It turned out the Tsu family were con artists. First, Sue was a master thief, her hands faster than the wind, and was wanted by the authorities. Her father disguised himself as a fortune teller to scam superstitious fools. By bad luck, the father and son went out today and didn't check the calendar. The father was recognized by someone he had once deceived and had to surrender all the money he'd earned that morning, hoping the man wouldn't expose him. Coincidentally, the thug named Sky Phoenix happened to find the sword box of Blade Cain, So as soon as the box saw its master, it flew back to him. Blade Kane paid no attention to the thief standing before him. However, the thug noticed him. Claiming to be the kingpin of the dark freight gang, he saw that Blade Kane didn't greet him and stomped on his hand. Justice Bell, unable to stand injustice, stepped in to protect Blade Kane. As a true martial wanderer, she wasn't afraid to confront the dark freight gang. She manipulated her dagger swiftly, brushing past the thugs like a gust of wind. When she stopped, their pants had all fallen down. If you keep causing trouble, the next thing I cut will be what's inside your pants. With that, she dragged Blade Kane away to escape. They hadn't gone far when it started raining. Being close to a handsome guy for the first time, Justice Bell was a little shy. She offered Blade Kane some sticky rice cakes she'd queued to buy. But he coldly knocked them aside. I am now a cripple. I don't believe anything good exists for me in this world. What's your intention in saving me? Blade Kane misunderstood the Tai family's motives, thinking they were trying to probe his power and steal his sword box. Justice Bell had no idea what he was talking about. She could only comfort him and say she meant no harm. Blade Kane had nowhere else to go, so he returned to the Tai household. This family only had the father and Justice Bell working as fire miners. The younger siblings were sent to school in hopes of changing their fate. The younger boys wanted to become martial artists like their sister. When one of them spoke about robbing the rich to help the poor, Justice Bell slapped him and he stormed off upset. Eventually, Blade Kane realized Justice Bell wasn't a bad person. She turned to banditry because she had no other path, but she didn't want her siblings to follow in her footsteps. As for Blade Kane, he didn't even know what kind of person he wanted to become. Justice Bell took his hand and said they didn't need to become anyone specific, as long as they could live and enjoy life. She handed out pens to her siblings, and surprisingly, there was also a pen for Blade Kane to practice writing. Unfortunately, Justice Bell's little brother was captured by the Dark Freight Gang. Sky Phoenix cruelly wanted to drop a durian onto the boy's groin. Justice Bell rushed in, causing Sky Phoenix to hide behind his men in fear. He demanded she drop her weapons before he'd release her brother, but as soon as she threw her dagger, he activated a trap and captured her. Sky Phoenix laughed maniacally, only to have the durian fly straight into his groin. His thugs cautiously approached to see who dared do it. Each one was taken down silently, and their mysterious attacker remained hidden. A howling wind sent shivers down Sky Phoenix's spine. Blade Kane appeared behind him and slapped him repeatedly until he passed out. When Sky Phoenix's backup troops arrived, he finally dared to regain consciousness. Blade Kane calmly used his technique to shatter the thug's clothes into pieces using the sword box. His underlings, scared out of their minds, pretended to laugh and fled. Sky Phoenix dropped all his pride and begged the hero to spare his life. Blade Kane ignored him and even gifted him the sword box. This act symbolized him abandoning the title of top assassin of the Seven Slay sect, choosing instead to live a normal life with the Tai family. His first challenge was eating the incredibly salty soup cooked by the mother. Her background was not simple. She knew of the Seven Slay sects. She warned Blade Kane to be cautious, lest his sword aura attract sect pursuers and endanger her family. Blade Kane passed the soup test, but he couldn't stay. He went to say goodbye to Justice Bell, who wept as she bid farewell to her new friend. Tonight we talk. Tomorrow we part. They stayed up talking all night. Justice Bell gave Blade Kane a pen and even named him 12. Meanwhile, at the Dark Freight Gang, Sky Phoenix was still fuming from the humiliation. His men tried to cheer him up by bringing a stunning beauty. They didn't know she was the assassin Scarlet, who had tracked the sword box's aura to the gang. The entire manor was now wrapped by her deadly snake. Seeing her devour someone right before his eyes, Sky Phoenix screamed in terror. Scarlet asked him where he got the sword box. He stammered that someone gave it to him. Back with Blade Kane, he wore a new outfit gifted by Justice Bell's father. Seeing it, the mother was reminded of her handsome husband's younger days and fainted from the shock of Kane's good looks. Upon waking, she allowed Blade Kane to stay with them. But he had to take on the task of cooking, though in truth, this delicious meal was prepared by Sword. From then on, the family no longer had to eat salty soup. That evening, The whole family excitedly went out to watch the lanterns in the sky. Only then did Sword understand. The lanterns themselves weren't special, but watching them with loved ones made them extraordinary. Who said Sword had no family? These 6 kind-hearted people were now his loved ones, his saviors. Soon came the Lantern Festival. Joy eagerly held Sword's hand and led him to the fair. She ran off to buy sweet potato cakes, unaware the seller was a demon. Sword sensed the dark energy of his fellow sect member and turned toward Joy, but in a flash, she had vanished. The crowd, terrified by Red Spear's energy, fled. Sword detected poison in the air crafted by alchemist Nyan. He was trapped in a barrier created by Neon, but could still move freely and fight him hand to hand, even without his sword box. Yet he could still control sword arts, for the sword magic was his own creation. Alone, Sword faced 5 demon lords of the Seven Slayers sect, forming a battlefield. He summoned thousands of swords to surround them. The demon bell of the false monk Soku couldn't withstand Sword's grand blade. It shattered swiftly. A few petty mages dared to oppose the #1 assassin of the Seven Slayers sect, but were beaten down. The one fond of trapping others with barrier spells, the mummified traitor Void Soul, though hiding underwater, could not escape fate. After dealing with them, Sword stepped onto his sacred sword and chased after Serpent Tail and Red Spear, who were abducting Joy. Red Spear, overestimating herself, tried to use Joy to threaten Sword. She forgot he had teleportation magic. He snatched Joy and carried her on his back. With one hand, he fought Serpent Tail and Red Spear. Serpent Tail was flung away and furiously summoned the Serpent King, who cloned itself into 100 heads, vastly increasing its strength. Suddenly, Joy's father's fat goose flew in and transformed into a giant white crane as big as the serpent. Its razor-sharp talons crushed the serpent's heads. To it, the Serpent King was nothing but a few common lizards. Joy and Sword ran home, thinking they were safe, only to find Blade Lee had tracked them down. Sword's techniques were useless against him, for the man had raised him with his own hands. Sword offered his life in exchange for his adopted family's safety. But Blade Lie's true purpose in raising him was to turn him into the merciless Seven Slayers' weapon, erasing all mortal emotions and desires. Now that Sword had fallen in love, Blade Lie's efforts were wasted. He wouldn't let him live. Sword lay still, accepting his fate. Just as Blade Lie's demonic hand reached to rip out his heart, Joy's father appeared, a man usually frightened of his wife. But in truth, he was a hidden master of the martial world, with strength nearly matching Blade Lie. And of course, his beloved wife was no ordinary woman. Together, their combined power summoned a massive cyclone across stormy skies. Blade Lee, like a demon king, was overwhelmed by Shushan's sword aura and lotus mind magic. It turned out Joy's parents were Bai Yunfei and the goddess Niamqingchen. No matter how powerful Blade Lee's magic was after 1,000 years of training, it couldn't rival theirs. The sword aura and heaven ring overwhelmed him, wounding him gravely. Seeing defeat inevitable, he fled. The couple returned to their mortal forms. Sword had survived, but his life was forever altered. They could no longer stay in the abandoned temple. Mother had to reveal everything to the children. She was Niamqingchen, once chosen to be the next celestial maiden of the Heavenly Mountain sect. She had to master the Nuwa heart technique to protect the sect, but rushed her training, resulting in madness and the deaths of innocents. Just as she was to face eternal punishment, her lover Bai Yunfei of Shushan arrived on a crane to save her. His fellow disciples told him not to meddle in such affairs, to save a demoness, but he knew she had only temporarily lost her way. Even if he had to defy the world, he would protect her. She meant more to him than anything. This defiance broke divine law. Neither were spared. Bai Yunfei rebelled, unleashing the myriad sword return. As the sect's strongest disciple, he easily summoned all swords to form a protective ring around them. The two fled the heavens, found a mountain temple, changed appearances, married, and had children. Niamqingchen carved Buddha statues in repentance. After yesterday's battle with Blade Lee, their identities were exposed. Surely the heavens would soon hunt them. So the family set out for Paradise Island to build a new home. To reach it, they had to cross the Great Sea. But the boat Joy's father had ordered hadn't arrived. Suddenly, hundreds of celestial beings descended from the sky. The crimes committed decades ago by Niamqingchen and Bai Yunfei remained unforgiven. An elder brother chastised Bai Yunfei for foolishly abandoning duty for a demoness. But Bai Yunfei had no regrets. No one could insult his wife. Once more, he unleashed the most powerful celestial magic, stirring massive ocean waves. The family had to keep moving. But Bai Yunfei was internally wounded. Carrying 2 injured people would be difficult. So Joy volunteered to stay behind and distract the heavenly soldiers, giving her mother and siblings a chance to escape. However, when Tuan Mang returned, she pointed her sword at her mother, accusing her of lying. It turned out they weren't truly family. Bai Li had just revealed to Not So that 20 years ago, when Nyem Kin Tran, her mother, succumbed to demonic possession, she had descended to the mortal world and wiped out the entire Tu family, Not So's biological parents. In pain, she turned to her mother, hoping it wasn't true, but her mother confessed. Back then, it was her daughter's cries that awakened her from madness. Nyem Kin Tran had annihilated Nat So's clan, and now she was willing to pay with her life. Bai Li ambushed them, prompting Nyem Kin Tran to urge her children to escape. Whoever could survive should do so. She stayed behind to fight him. Yesterday's battle had drained her, so she was no match for Bai Li now. Even now, Natso still called her mother. With no one left to stop him, Bai Li advanced to finish off Kiem Ka. Kiem Ka used a spell, flinging a brush at Bai Li. Since it wasn't a sword, Bai Li couldn't control it. The brush's tip pierced his eye, redirecting his fury toward Natso and her mother. Nyem Kin Tran, fatally wounded, knew her time had come. Before dying, she apologized endlessly. Natso forgave her, letting Nyem Kin Tran pass in peace. Bak Van Phi took Kiem Ka and the children to Thuc San Mountain. He used his inner strength to heal Kiem Ka. The woman he loved most was gone. Having nothing left to live for, he condensed his lifetime of cultivation into a golden pill to rebuild Kiem Ka's shattered life. This sacred, forbidden ground in Thuc San held the ancient sword techniques of the Sword Immortals. It was here, 20 years ago, that Baksh Van Phi mastered the 10,000 swords return. Now, he passed the entire art on to Kiem Ka. Only with willpower could one harness the limitless power of heaven and earth. Kiem Ka could now command the 9 ranks of flying swords and surpass even young Bak Van Phi. But there was one final lesson left untaught, one that Kiem Ka had to choose for himself, to abandon the mortal world and transcend. Cutting all earthly ties, after gaining enlightenment, Kiem Ka rode a crane down the mountain to save Natso. Bak Van Phi returned to his beginnings. When he came to the mortal realm and built a family with his beloved, everything had started from 2 hearts beating as one, creating a joyous family. Back to the present, the crane brought Kiem Ka to Ghost Buddha Mountain. Hundreds of swords flew at him, but he gathered them and returned the strike. He entered the place of his birth and faced the cruel father who had stripped him of his humanity. Natso was trapped in a dissolving barrier. To save her, Kiem Ka had to destroy his father. The two clashed, good against evil, and now Kiem Ka's power had grown. Bai Li never expected his son to grow so strong so quickly. As Natso's body began to fade, Kiem Ka accelerated his attack. He fused hundreds of small swords into one massive blade that pierced Bai Li's magical defenses and stabbed through his chest. But Bai Li didn't die. Instead, he laughed. The final missing piece of his 7 killings demon art was this very sword tip. Bai Li completed his dark technique. Kiem Ka's sword arts became useless. He was thrown back and forced to unleash his ultimate move, Kang La Dapna Dong Kan Tai Huyen, temporarily sealing the 7 killings demon art. He broke the seal to rescue Nyat So. The crane carried them out. Bai Li, enraged, summoned the ghost Buddha, which grabbed at the crane. The crane struggled to escape its grasp. Kiem Ka unleashed his strongest move, 10,000 swords return. Countless blades flew from all directions, raining down on Bai Li. The heavenly sword opened the gates. A blinding sword descended from the sky, striking the ghost Buddha's head, shattering the mountain, and obliterating Bai Li. In the end, Kiem Ka and Natso rode the crane back to reunite with their father and siblings. Kiem Ka chose to give up immortality to live as a mortal beside Natso. The film ends here. If you enjoyed this, don't hesitate to like and subscribe to our channel for more upcoming reviews.